Chair now recognizes Mr. Cloud from Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Now, we have heard time after time Joe Biden, say that he had no knowledge whatsoever about the business dealings, and that changed. He had never allegedly had any conversation with Hunter. Then they moved the ball to say that, well, he didn't have any business dealings, he wasn't involved, didn't have any financial contribution. Since then, we've uncovered about 20 shell companies, and we have bank records that bring light to that. And while we can't cover all 20 shell companies in 5 minutes, I wanted to focus on one, and that is Rosemont Seneca Bohai. Rosemont Seneca Bohai is interesting, and Devin Archer had testified, and he said this in his testimony. He said that this entity, quote, was used as a common entity, owned 50-50 on a handshake deal between Devin and Hunter splitting these shares. Actually, that was your words, Mr. Galanis. Do you stand by those words?
Yes, I do.
And Devin Archer agreed with that. He said Hunter was a corporate secretary of RSB and had a handshake 50-50 ownership deal. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And primarily this company was set up initially as a place to hold equity from the equity stake of Bohai Harvest. Is that correct?
What I was told by the partners at the time, it was set up to do that and invest in other businesses. I think Devin Archer subsequently testified to that effect. And it included monies that were paid from the bond fraud, $15 million that was wired to that RSB account as well.
Yeah.
So it conducted multiple transactions as you depicted in that diagram.
And even if this were legal and there was no impropriety here, it's very concerning because this company set up to basically compete against America's energy interests at the behest of CCP. Then we have other flows into Rosemont Seneca Bohai from Burisma. We all know about Hunter's $1 million salary that he received for sitting on the board and providing no actual function there. And so we have $1 million salary going through Rosemont Seneca to Hunter Biden. And then this is interesting. We have a meeting with Kazakhstani Kens Rekashev. And what gets me here is the $300 at the end of the $142,300 that goes into this. And then the next day went to a Porsche dealership for a car for Hunter Biden. Now, what's interesting about all this, of course, is that each of these not only flowed money through the shell companies to Hunter Biden, but each of them also involved important meetings with, of course, President Biden. And so on December 4th, we have coffee with Jonathan Lee, who was one of the members who started Bohai Harvest. And he was connected with the CCP. They were having trouble getting licensed to work because, of course, the CCP has to get permission for that, until Hunter flew over on Air Force Two with Vice President Joe Biden at the time. They met with Jonathan Lee. Hunter introduced him. Joe ended up writing a letter of recommendation to Jonathan Lee's daughter to get into college. And then we see that this relationship continues to be formed. Of course, in the Ukraine, we know that April 16th, 2015, Joe Biden had dinner with a Burisma official at Cafe Milano. Seemed to be a popular spot because Joe Biden also had dinner with Kens Rekashev there. All in flow to going here. And of course, as Tony Pawlinski has pointed out several times, this all comes down to eventually the one big guy who gets 10% for the big guy. And so we know that all this money flowed through this to get to Hunter, and then we know, of course, that 10% went to the big guy. So, Mr. Bobulinski, does this general pattern of Hunter offering foreign access to Joe Biden, Hunter gets paid, and then Joe gets a share of that, is that basically what the general practice across many of these shell companies were?
Congressman, as I outlined, the big guy is clearly Joe Biden. The details of some of those transactions I was not involved in, but that's clearly how they operated.
But that's the pattern that we've seen over. And Mr. Galanis, you said at the beginning that Hunter didn't really provide any sort of intellectual propriety asset value or anything of the sort, that his entire value was the brand. Is that correct? How did you state that?
Yeah, we didn't rely on him for any work product other than delivering the Biden lift.
The Biden lift. And one more question for you, Mr. Galanis. Did you offer to provide information on Hunter Biden and Devon Archer back in 2016 to prosecutors and the SEC, and what happened there?
Yes, through counsel, I had offered to provide information specifically on that to the SDNY. And I subsequently also did the same thing to the Securities and Exchange Commission, which was interested in, subsequently was told to quash that interest. I understood that to be an order from the Southern District of New York to quash the SEC information.
Thank you. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlemen's time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Goldman for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I only have 5 minutes, Mr. Bobulinski, so I'm going to try to move quickly, and I'd appreciate if you just answer the questions. You testified that Joe Biden was involved in your business venture related to Oneida Holdings and Hunter Biden. So I want to drill down on the crux of what your testimony is. Oneida Holdings is the business venture that you are referring to, correct?
When I'm referring to what? Can you
Any
ask the
business you did with the Bidens?
My reference is the Sinohawk Holdings LLC, and Oneida Holdings LLC owned 50% of that.
Right. And Oneida Holdings was the 50% that was on the American side of that Sinohawk deal, right?
It was the 50% that was the Biden side of it. Some of the, James Gilliar is not an American, so.
Sorry, fair enough. And it was a joint partnership memorialized in an incorporating document, correct? And it had equal shares divided among 5 partners. Is that right?
I can't.
Well,
Are you asking me about what you're holding up? Because
sir, was it an equal? Were there equal 20% shares among 5 partners?
in what?
Oneida Holdings.
In the final signed documents?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking me?
Yes.
It is?
It's not complicated.
Well, it is because.
All right, you're just filibustering now. The answer is you're filibustering. I get it. That there were 5 partners: Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, Rob Walker, James Gilliar, and you. Each owned 20%. Do you?
Well, they didn't each own. Their LLCs owned it, which is a material
Do you
difference.
see Joe Biden or an LLC related to Joe Biden on this?
I don't know if Joe Biden owned any of Jim Biden's LLC or Hunter Biden's LLC. I'll leave that up to the committee.
Okay. And do you know when this agreement was entered into?
The poster
Take
board
it
that
down.
you're holding up, or the actual legal document that was signed?
The agreement, sir.
The agreement.
The agreement was signed May 22nd, 2017. Who was the vice president then?
May 22nd, you said? I think it was Mike Pence.
And who was the president?
Donald Trump.
Okay. And when did you first meet Hunter Biden?
I first met Hunter Biden in early 2017.
When? When in 2017?
A day or
The
an
month.
hour?
Month is
or a
good.
month? I believe I briefly met him in New York, but I spent the first meeting I had extensive time with him was in early May 2017.
And that was around the same time that you had those 2 meetings with Joe Biden, right?
It was, but prior to that, I had numerous
So, look,
discussions
you have
with
said,
Hunter.
you have said
I had
that-
lawyers working through the documents that you're
Can I
asking.
please reclaim my time, sir? As I
Okay.
said, we have to move quickly here. Unfortunately, in your testimony earlier today, one of my colleagues asked you about that meeting at the bar, 45 minutes to 60 minutes. And you were also asked about that in your transcribed interview. And in neither of your answers did you mention any discussion that you had at that meeting with Joe Biden about the Chinese business venture. Yet, in grandiose terms here today, you have declared that Joe Biden was involved and that you have mountains of irrefutable evidence to support it. So let's look at the mountains of irrefutable evidence. You provided the committee with a screenshot of a text message that is between James Gilliard and you, dated May 11th, 2017. You see this? I don't know if you can see it. If you can't see, it's just you and James Gilliard, though, right? You remember this text message, I'm sure.
Generally, yes.
All right. And in it, Gilliard writes, "Man, you are right. Let's get the company set up, then tell H and family the high stakes and get Joe involved. And 2 days later, Mr. Gilliar sent an email to you, CCing Rob Walker and Hunter Biden, in which he suggested a division of the company and included a proposal of, quote, 10% held by H for the big guy, question mark. You remember that, right?
The infamous email with the big guy? Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
Did anyone ever respond to that email?
Yes, they did, numerous times.
Sorry.
Hunter
Did anyone
Biden
ever-
himself
excuse me,
did.
Excuse me. You're right.
Well, no, I
Did
think
anyone
that's
e-
important because
Sir,
Hunter
did
Biden
anyone
has
ever
claimed that he didn't
Can you answer my
respond to it,
questions?
and he responded
Okay.
to it, I believe,
You're just
3
going to
times.
filibuster. I reclaim my time that's running out, but I will say no one responded to the big guy reference for 10.
Thank you
So
for making my
what-
point. They didn't have to respond
Right.
because
And
they
then,
all knew the big
sir,
guy was Joe
I
Biden.
reclaim my time. Mr. Chairman, please control the witness. I would like to get a little extra time, Mr. Chairman, because I want to read what Mr. Gilliar said to the Wall Street Journal. Quote, I would like to clear up any speculation that former Vice President was involved with the 2017 discussions about our potential business structure. I am unaware of any involvement at any time of the former Vice President. The activity in question never delivered and project revenue. 9 days later, the agreement without Joe Biden was signed. You and James Gilliar wanted Joe Biden involved, and that is why Hunter Biden dumped you and did the business
That's a
on his
blatant
own.
lie, Mr.
And I yield
Goldman. You
back.
know better.
Chairman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Higgins from Louisiana for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Bobulinski, thank you for being here today, and we appreciate the candor of your responses, sir, which is reflective of the way you handled yourself in private testimony and deposition. So I thank you for communicating truthfully to the American people today. I'm going to ask you about the China Energy Fund Committee, the CEFC. You familiar with that, sir?
I am.
Was this a multi-billion-dollar company, like a Fortune 500 company at one time?
It's even bigger than that. If you go back and look at its financials in 2016 and 17, it was probably one of the 5 largest private companies in China.
So exactly. So this was a major operation that had a lot of money, and apparently, I'm going to hold up a memo here from this is a chart from the Second Bank memo, and it shows disbursement of a total of almost $24 million for diamonds. So you have a major Chinese company spending a lot of money on diamonds, and apparently diamonds were used as a means of payment for the Biden family. We know that the Bidens have testified that admitted to having 2 diamonds. We suspect that there are many, many more, $23 million worth of diamonds. Are you familiar with the exchange of valuable assets to pay the Bidens other than electronic transfers of monies? Are you aware of payments in diamonds, payment in cash, payment in board memberships, et cetera?
Am I generally aware of it,
Yes,
or was
sir.
I involved? Yeah, I read Jim Biden's and Hunter Biden's transcript multiple times. Jim Biden in that transcript references 2 diamonds that were given to Hunter Biden. One, he implies, was in 2015 by an individual who he couldn't recall his name, but the individual's name is Scott O., who was a surrogate for CFC. And then apparently a second diamond was given at a meeting in Miami. And I really want to set the record clear. I was not at that physical meeting. I was in Miami, but I was not at that physical meeting. That's what I told the FBI in my transcribed interview.
Are you aware, Mr. Bobulinski, of a pattern of bribery, of bribe payments coming from the China Energy Fund Committee?
I appreciate that question. I wish everyone on this committee would read the 1,200 pages of testimony in an 8-day trial in the SDNY where Mr. Goldman used to work while the actual trial was going on, that accused numerous executives, ultimately Patrick Ho, of corruption, bribing, leaving shoeboxes of cash
Exactly.
to to a variety of political figures in Africa.
Exactly. So, Mr. Bobulinski, from your perch within the Biden family operations and their interactions with major businesses in China and the exchange of millions of dollars that are known, we've tracked them through bank records, through suspicious activity reports, through emails, through communications that this committee has documented. There's no debate that millions and millions of dollars flowed into the Biden family's bank accounts, but the existence of other forms of payment is fascinating because diamonds are untraceable. We really don't know how many diamonds the Bidens received, do we?
We don't. And for somebody who's been to mainland China probably 10 plus times, Hong Kong probably 15 plus times,
Yeah,
I
let
had
me
hundreds
shift.
of people, Congressman, I had hundreds of people working for me in mainland China. At one point, I never got a diamond from any
I
businessman
hear you.
or woman.
So, Mr. Bobulinski, I shift quickly to a text message. Are you familiar with this? It's from a gentleman named James.
Generally, yes.
Yes, says, don't mention Joe being involved. It's only when you're face to face. I know you know that, but they are paranoid. And there's a response saying, okay, they should be paranoid about things. And then there's a response saying, for real. So what is meant by don't mention Joe being involved? It's only when you're face to face. I know you know that, but they are paranoid.
Well, I think it outlines how the Bidens operated, not specifically just with CFC. You have Galanis here testifying and numerous other witnesses that have given you tremendous amount of evidence that outline they worked to obfuscate it, create layers of obstruction. That's the reason why Rob Walker was getting sent millions of dollars instead of Hunter Biden directly. That's the reason why Devin Archer was receiving millions of dollars instead of going to Hunter directly. You guys have a mountain of evidence that stacks high and answers that question on how they obfuscated. They lived in a world of plausible deniability.
Thank you, Mr. Bobulinski. Mr. Chairman, my time has expired. I yield.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Norton from D.C. for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Galanis, thank you for appearing voluntarily for this hearing from Alabama. I understand you are currently serving a 189-month sentence in federal prison, almost 16 years, after being convicted of not one, but two, but not one, not two, but three different schemes. The victims of your schemes, as the judge who presided over your criminal prosecution noted, included, and here I quote, one of the poorest Native American tribes in the country, as well as pension funds held for the benefit of transit workers, longshoremen, housing authority workers, and city employees, hardworking people, everyday people, among others. The court also noted that you personally benefited from these schemes, and again I quote, using over $8 million, almost $9 million, for lavish personal expenditures, including home expenses, automobiles, travel, clothing, jewelry expenses, and meanwhile, investors were left with nothing. But this is not your only encounter with prosecutors. In another case, the Security and Exchange Commission charged you in 2005 with accounting fraud in connection with your involvement with Penthouse magazine. And in 2010, you were convicted of attempted tax evasion and were sentenced to 5 years probation in order to pay nearly $2 million in restitution. In imposing your prison sentence, the judge noted that you are, and here I quote, an extremely talented man, extremely gifted in his interpersonal skills, uncommonly so. He is very persuasive as an individual, and those were the tools in his tool bag of the fraud he committed and the people he ensnared, his intelligence, his interpersonal skills, his charm, if you will. And this is something that is not unseen in people who are commonly referred to as con artists. Another judge who presided over your case referred to you as, quote, a skillful con artist. A skillful con artist, that is who my Republican colleagues are relying on to carry their water in this sham impeachment inquiry after their last star witness, the author of the infamous FBI Form 1023, was indicted for lying and outed as a likely Republican agent. It is time we put an end to this pathetic and desperate inquiry. I yield my remaining time to Ranking Member Raskin.
Ms. Norton, thank you very much. So for more than a year now, we've heard innuendo, rumors, propaganda, big lies, but no facts, no evidence that could reasonably support the finding of impeachable high crimes and misdemeanors against President Biden. In our first real impeachment hearing, the majority invited several expert witnesses who came together, and their witnesses agreed with that there was nothing that remotely approached the level of proof needed to support a finding of high crimes and misdemeanors that one would impeach a president for. And now we come back again today, and the majority has two witnesses. One, the designated con man as determined by two different federal courts, not without talent, but someone who deploys his talent towards the purposes of exploiting Native American Indian tribes, pensioners, and other innocent investors. And then Mr. Bobulinski, who offers a lot of rhetoric and a lot of hot air, but absolutely no facts that could indict the President of the United States for high crimes and misdemeanors, impeachable offenses against the Republic, the kinds of offenses which James Madison said are great attacks on the Republic itself, great affronts to our Republican form of government. And nobody on their side can even tell us what is the impeachable high crime and misdemeanor, which suggests that they are moving in the direction of criminal referrals, and they should start by looking at their own witnesses. I yield back to you, Mr. Chairman.
And I'd like to remind the ranking member and Ms. Norton, the witness, Mr. Galanis, was partners with Hunter Biden. That's why he's here. We have their partners. You could have invited partners, but you invited this guy.
Yeah, Donald Trump's partner, Mr. Parnas, who was working
he
with
was
Donald
Donald
Trump
Trump
and Rudy Giuliani.
All right.